Good evening, or morning, whenever I get around to posting this. Today, I will tell you a tale that is, well, I don't know really, I'm just about to read it. But the person who vets these things for me, they better know what they're doing, or they will pay, and pay dearly. For your nightly enjoyment, here is Uncle Jerry's Family Fun Zone. I didn't know Will could draw. I remember thinking as my friend's hand quickly moved across the page. And then I looked more closely at Will's impromptu sketch, and I immediately regretted it. I tried to unsee it. I shifted my attention to other things around me, anything at all that wasn't ink on the page. The blur of Will's hand, the beads of sweat gathering at his temples, the gentle autumn breeze creeping through the crack of the window. Don't look at the page. Just don't look at it. But I knew I had to, so I looked, and it was worse than I expected. Much worse. Will had sketched a near carbon copy of those wartime Uncle Sam posters, except not quite. The suit was there, bow tie, check, but no Uncle Sam head. The Uncle Sam body had the head of a goat. The animal flashed a welcoming, toothy smile. A hoof pointed at me, nearly coming right out of the page. But it didn't want me to join the U.S. Army. No, this goat-headed creature had something else in mind. I want your kids. Under that declaration, in slightly smaller letters, it read, At Uncle Jerry's Family Fun Zone. Opening soon. I've never heard of Uncle Jerry's Family Fun Zone before yesterday. The place, I quickly learned, played host to a significant moment in Will's childhood. And although I'd been good friends with him for 15 years, he'd never told me the story. But today, he'd opened up. I wasn't trying to reopen any wounds from his past. I just wanted him to tell me a story. Any story. I'd been listening to a lot of NPR, and being inspired by their storytelling segments and slices of American life, I purchased some professional recording equipment and set up a makeshift studio in my house. My goal was to capture and archive the stories of my friends, relatives, really anyone who had something to say. Call it boredom. I was a widower with a 7-year-old son. Besides doting on my kid, I needed something productive to fill my time. My recording area was cozy. Just a couple of microphones, a small table, a few chairs. I'd sit a few feet from my interview subjects. The intimacy would induce a real honesty and emotion. That was the plan, and it worked a little too well. I never thought my storytelling experiments would go so wrong so quickly. And it wasn't just Will's story, it sketched the Uncle Sam human-goat hybrid thing. Before I had interviewed Will, I heard another version of Will's events from another person involved in the Family Fun Zone incident. Will's wife and my good friend, Caroline. Caroline and I dated a little while in college, a stretch of time we now joke occurred in a parallel universe. We were never supposed to happen, we decided. Instead, there was some sort of cosmic hiccup and different universes intersected for the briefest of times. Our relationship was over before it started. Caroline then began dating Will. The two lived happily ever after, and the three of us have been close ever since. Caroline and Will's history predated our collective existence in college. The two went to high school together, but I never knew exactly what they'd experienced as classmates and friends. Not until I set up my little recording studio. I interviewed Caroline first, and Will's interview occurred the following day. Both of my friends requested I not tell the other about the contents of their respective interviews. I'm certainly not planning on it. Both interviews were long and free-ranging. I'll just transcribe the relevant portions of their stories, the stuff about the relationships and about Uncle Jerry's Family Fun Zone. It's important that these stories be shared in some form. So how did you and Will meet? We went to the same schools growing up, but we weren't friends or anything like that. You know how you kind of know everyone you go to school with, but most people are just on the periphery? That was Will, always there, but not really. We ran with different circles. You can't pinpoint the moment you actually met for the first time? I can't. I can't remember the first meaningful interaction we had, though. I was writing for the school paper, and God, I can't believe I actually wrote for the paper because I was a terrible, just a horrible writer. And I was researching a story. It was a legend in our town, something all the kids talked about but no one could prove. Did you have any of those? I think so. I'd have to think about it, but I'm sure I had some. Yeah, so you know what I'm talking about. One of those, oh, my brother's friend's mechanic had this experience type thing. It was pretty famous growing up where we did. Kind of a spook story to scare kids from staying out late at night or running around doing irresponsible things. It was a place called Uncle Gerry's Family Fun Zone. Ha! Gosh, I haven't thought about that place in years. Uncle Gerry's Family Fun Zone? Just saying it out loud sounds so weird, right? Just completely and utterly made up. And when we got older, most of us thought that it was made up because it was just a silly and stupid legend. So of course it would have a ridiculous name. What was the legend? It had been so long, but from what I remember, it was a children's play zone type place that existed in the late 70s or early 80s. No one could pinpoint it. But the story was this guy, Gerry something, but everyone called him Uncle Gerry, inherited a piece of land out in the woods from his grandfather. He took all of his money and turned it into a fun zone, you know, slides, games, trampolines, kind of like an indoor rec type place, but all barnyard themes. So the place looked like a red and white barn with a silo, but inside was all this kid's stuff. He built this out in the woods? That's what everyone said. But the messed up part was what happened there. Apparently like 30 some years ago, a kid slid down the slide and just vanished into the ball pit. Like there was no trace of him. I think he was only 4, maybe 5. I can't remember for sure. Anyway, they emptied the ball pit and everything. The only thing at the bottom was a trapdoor and a crawl space that led nowhere. It was just dead-ended. No one knew why it was there. But the kid vanished, the town freaked, Gerry split, and the place shut down. And that really happened? Every kid in town believed it. The story was that it was some sort of hellhole that sucked down small children, and it needed to be fed. Like it swallowed up that kid, and if anyone went near the place, it would swallow you up too. Don't explore too far from home, or you'll stumble across Uncle Gerry's blah blah blah. But you get past middle school and you think it's all bullshit. Was it bullshit? You said you were writing a story about it for the newspaper and you met Will? Yeah. So I decided to write about Uncle Gerry's, and Will heard about it. He joined the newspaper club because he wanted to help. I think he just wanted to spend time with me. But he helped me with my research. He talked with people, looked at old newspapers, spent a lot of time in those creepy library stacks. That's where Will held my hand for the first time. God, we were so young. Did you find anything? Nothing. There was no record of the place. We even talked to the police department. They had nothing. Did they know what you were talking about? Oh yeah, everyone had heard of Uncle Gerry's, and everyone was really nice about helping us, but nothing factual existed. My article was going terribly. It was all dead ends. What was it that you expected? I don't know what I expected. I just thought it'd be a cool article. So I thought I had a lot of interviews of people telling the stories, and I was going to write this oral history type thing. But then, God, I haven't thought about this in years. Will came to me. He said he knew where the fun zone was. He said he had directions to a place that didn't exist. Will said that it did. It was out in the woods, down some roads that weren't on any maps. How did he get those directions? It's been so long. I honestly can't remember. Did they fall out of some ancient book in the library? I think that's what happened, but he had them. Did you go there? I've never told anyone this. No one. I can't believe I'm telling you right now. Will and I haven't talked about it since it happened. Wow, really? It's okay. We don't have to keep going. No, it's fine. It's just... Seriously, Caroline. I'm not trying to psychoanalyze you or ruin your marriage by making you dredge up terrible memories. That's not what I'm trying to do. It's okay. I want you to know. I want you to know. It wasn't supposed to be there. It just wasn't. What happened was Will was going to go there first to make sure it was safe, and I'd meet him there later on. And I did. I followed the directions perfectly down all of these forgotten dirt roads that used to be real roads. Right turn at a rock the size of a Volkswagen, go 3/4 of a mile, and take a left at the pine tree with the downed limb, stuff like that. All landmark stuff. But the directions were perfect. I drove what felt like forever down this bumpy road, and it just ended. Nowhere else to go. And there was Will, standing at the side of the road next to his car, hands jammed in his pockets. And he had this look in his eyes. He just looked different. It was almost like after that night, there were two Wills. The first Will, who had worked on the story, helped me research and held my hand in the library. He was so sweet, just so shy, tender, innocent. But after that night, he changed forever. Like, he never looked at me the same way again. And we've been married for now 9 years, and together since, junior year of college? So 13 years? And he's never looked at me the way he looked at me in the basement of the library back in high school. It was that night at the fun zone that changed him. I know it. It was that night. Caroline, have you ever thought about us? Like, what if our parallel universe had fully intersected forever with the real one, and we were together? I haven't. Look, I think we should stop recording. Please, don't. It's just me and Will, 9 years, no kids, no babies. And he just doesn't look at me like he's supposed to. He's supposed to give me a baby. And we're supposed to be living this love story, but something went wrong. And it all started that night. What happened? On that night, I mean. I pulled off to the side of this dirt road that no one had driven on in probably decades. And like I said, Will just seemed different. I asked him if he'd found it, and he said that it was there. Uncle Gerry's family fun zone was there. Will grabbed 2 flashlights from his car, and we followed a path through some brush. Then it kind of emerged before us, nestled in the trees. The barn, the silo, everything. It was so strange. It was almost like it materialized, if that makes sense. It was dark, so yeah, I know what you mean. And there was this picket fence around the place, and each board was painted either yellow, green, or light purple. And it was held up better than it should have. The paint should have completely peeled off, or maybe the whole thing should have fallen down, but it was in good shape. Did you go inside? I mean, we came all that way, right? The main entrance was this huge wooden double door, probably 15 feet high, and above it was the sign, Uncle Gerry's Family Fun Zone, with this picture of a cartoon farmer with a piece of straw hanging from his mouth. And the sign had been vandalized. Someone had sprayed painted X's over the farmer's eyes, and nearly every letter had been scribbled out. Everything except for fun. But the F was turned into an R, and an exclamation point was added. So it just read, "Run!" So we weren't the first people that had been there. And I remember thinking, I don't know if this makes me feel better or worse. Who went in first? Will did. He pushed open the door and it creaked the whole time. I was nervous someone would hear it, but we were out in the middle of nowhere, you know? So it was kind of dumb. Will raised his flashlight and jumped backwards into me. We were staring at this giant goat statue made out of fiberglass. Had to have been 7 feet tall. It was standing on its hind legs with the other front legs reaching out, like it was hugging something invisible. I guess it was a photo op. You know, stand inside, take your picture. And they were everywhere. What was everywhere? Fiberglass farm animals. Goats, sheep, cows, pigs, all standing on 2 legs. All with their front legs extended. They were scattered around the whole place, almost like soldiers keeping watch. Most of them were covered with some black soot substance. I ran my hand across one of the sheep. The soot was probably half an inch thick. I still remember it trickling through my fingers. It was wet, almost gooey. I honestly don't know what it was. What else was inside? Slides. They were everywhere. Slides, jungle gyms, swinging bridges, a basketball court. We crept around for I don't know how long, just not believing it was real. And it was just so dark and utterly silent. We got turned around so many times, it was like we were going deeper and deeper. And I know this doesn't make sense, but it felt like we walked longer than we should have. Like the place was bigger on the inside than it looked on the outside. At one point, I remember looking back at Will and saying, "It's like a maze in here." And right at that moment, we almost ran into a sign that said, "Uncle Jerry's Amazing Cornstalk Maze." We were right at the entrance to the maze, but it wasn't made out of corn. The walls were wooden with cornstalks painted on them, and there was no way we were going in there. Not a chance. Did you find the ball pit? We did. It was at the bottom of the tallest and widest slide in the whole place, right in the center of the barn. And the pit was just massive. Had to have been 40 feet wide, maybe 6 feet deep, but it was empty, no plastic balls. Just a giant, barren pit, and there was a ladder going down into it. And from where we were standing, we saw the hatch. Will looked at me and he kind of shrugged, and he said, "This is why we are here, right?" We climbed down, and as we walked towards the hatch, our feet echoed. But it was a different kind of echo, like it died quickly. Too quickly. Almost like something was sucking away the noise. I can't believe you guys did this. I guess it was adrenaline. Our flashlights were directly on the hatch, and it had one of those round steel rings. No lock. We stared at it for a while without saying anything. Almost like we were expecting it to start pulsating or to pop open. But we wanted to know what was inside. Had to know. So we decided to do it together. We grabbed the steel ring with both hands and pulled it up. I thought I'd be greeted with the bones of that dead kid. But there was only the smell that rushed us. It was very cold and crisp with a tiny whiff of sulfur. Will hopped right in and I reluctantly followed. The stories were all true. It was a crawl space to nowhere. We crouched down and crawled about 20 feet, and the tunnel just ended. Nothing but a smooth steel wall. We ran our hands across it. Maybe we'd find a secret handle or trigger a button or something, but there was nothing. And then we heard the noises from above. Holy God. Something had jumped into the pit, because the first thing we heard was the single reverberating thud. It was unmistakable. And then the footsteps directly above us, walking towards the hatch. We killed our flashlights and pressed our backs into the steel. Will put his arm around me and uncovered my mouth, and I did the same to him. My legs started trembling and bouncing on the floor, and Will grabbed it, steadying it. We listened as the footsteps got closer to the hatch, and then they just stopped. And I wanted to look down the tunnel. I did, but I didn't want whatever was there to see the whites of my eyes, because I was terrified it would give me away. But I felt its presence across the tunnel. I knew it was there. I felt it leaning down and staring at us. I'm sure about that. I even heard it breathing softly. Did he say anything? No. He just watched us for a while, and I never opened my eyes. And the next thing I remember is the hatch slamming shut and both Will and I jumping and hitting our heads on the crawlspace ceiling. We stayed there silent for, it had to be an hour. We eventually worked up the courage to crawl to the other end in the pitch black. And I was praying, just praying that this thing or person or whatever wasn't inside this crawl space with us. We were too scared to even turn on our flashlights. Every inch we crawled through, I thought, this is it. I'm going to reach out and feel something warm and snarling. But we made it to the end and we slowly raised the hatch. Thank God it hadn't locked us inside. We climbed out and we ran. We just ran. I don't even remember my legs moving beneath me. I remember it being, I was in the crawl space. Now I'm outside. Now I'm at the car. Just like that. We were safe. Did you tell anyone about this? Did you write the article? Will followed me to my house. We promised each other never to talk about it again. We were done. No article. Nothing. Why not? I think we stumbled across something we were never meant to see, and something knew we were there. And I think it let us off with a warning. We didn't want to make it mad. We were given a second chance. You keep calling it it. Is there a reason for that? Just a hunch. Just the sounds it made when it walked. The vibe it gave off. It didn't feel human. I honestly can't believe you haven't talked about this since high school. You or Will haven't brought it up? Not once? Will is... I love Will. But it changed him. It changed me. How long has it been since Grace died? 15 months. And you two didn't have any secrets or things you didn't talk about? We talked about everything, at least for my part. And I'm sure she wasn't keeping anything from me. What's that like? To have a marriage like that and a child to love? I think what we had was rare. And Tyler is my world. He's my everything. Do you ever think... I turned off the recording. Caroline was traveling down a road that I had no interest in going. She left shortly thereafter, making me promise not to share anything with Will. I gave her my word. At one point, I dropped the digital recording of her interview in the trash icon and hovered over the empty button for a few seconds. But I couldn't do it. I dragged it back to a folder on my desktop. Will came by the next day for his interview. It began plainly enough. The first 20 minutes focused on his grade school years, his baseball playing days in college, and his love of 80s action movies. Nothing revelatory, nothing deep. That changed. The interview direction veered towards love and marriage. I tried to avoid it, but it came up organically. Will hesitated, contemplating. I'd hoped he'd do to or right around it, but he looked at me sharply in the eyes and said, "Have you ever heard of Uncle Gerry's Family Fun Zone?" I lied, and I told him that I hadn't. He grabbed a sheet of paper from my desk and sketched out the Uncle Sam type flyer for that cursed children's fun zone. That's where the interview excerpt kicks in. Excerpt of Will interview. I was sitting in class. I think it was Spanish. And I look over with this beautiful girl in the row next to me is furiously scribbling in her notebook. And she's drawing this. Will holds up the sheet of paper. I can't explain it, but I was drawn to it. There was something about it. So I stopped her after class and I asked, "What's Uncle Gerry's Family Fun Zone?" Because I'd never heard of the damn place. Was it a place in town? That's the thing. It apparently was some kid's play area type place in the 1970s, and some little kid drowned in a ball pit, if that makes any sense. Carolyn told me the whole story, saying it was the most famous legend in our town, and she was writing a newspaper story about it. But I'd never heard of it. I asked all my friends, my parents, teachers, and I always got the same response. What are you talking about? And that made me more curious. Is this beautiful girl putting me on, or does she have a wild imagination? Because according to Caroline, this legend was as famous as Bigfoot or the Loch Ness Monster or whatever. Are you sure you weren't asking the right people? Google it. You'll find absolutely zero results about Uncle Gerry's Family Fun Zone. And if a legend is that famous, wouldn't it have some presence on the internet nowadays? Anything at all. Zero results. That's pretty incredible. And back then, it wasn't just people I knew. I joined the newspaper club, mainly out of this incredible fascination to find out more about this girl and why she was obsessed with this legend that didn't exist. And we interviewed dozens of people for the story. Historians, cops, librarians. We got a lot of strange looks. No one had ever heard of Uncle Gerry's, which made me more curious. Did you guys get together? I know you started dating in college. I didn't know you had a history. Not really. I mean, almost. Caroline had this pull on me that was hard to explain. We were spending a lot of time together, and she was gorgeous and funny and motivated. Man, just motivated to find out more about this Uncle Gerry's place. And I liked it. Even when I thought she was maybe a little crazy, I liked it. But she wasn't crazy. So it was real. Here's the thing. We had no clues or leads, and it was just hoping she'd give up. You know, drop the whole thing and we could start dating and doing normal teenage things or whatever. But one night, and shit, I haven't thought about this in forever. I was up late cramming for a test, and I see this bundled up old guy walking down my street. Just kind of putzing along, and The guy looks like he's 200 years old. And he stops at the end of my driveway, reaches into his overcoat, pulls something out and slips it into my mailbox. And I was like, what the hell is this? I stand up and he snaps his head and looks right at me. It was freaky, just really freaky. I dive down on the floor and I don't have the balls to look outside for another 10 minutes. By that point, he was gone. What did he put in the mailbox? I found out in the morning. It was directions. Scribbled on a napkin. Weird ass directions, like drive down this dirt road and look for the tallest tree, then turn right type directions. I immediately knew it had something to do with Uncle Jerry's. I just knew it. Did you tell Caroline? Here's the thing. And this will sound terrible, and I can't believe I'm telling someone. But here's what happened. This Uncle Jerry's thing had been going on for weeks, and I know I said I liked the fact that Caroline was obsessive over it, but things turned weird quick. She kept coming over my house to hang out, but she didn't seem too interested in me. She was more interested in my brother, who was 2 at the time. And God, it's hard to explain. It wasn't like a normal I like playing with your brother thing. It was creepy. The way she looked at him, it was almost like she needed him for something. That she was going to snatch him. Like we'd come home one day and David would be gone, and it would be because Caroline took him. Wow. I don't expect you to understand any of this. It doesn't make any sense. But I feel it. I'm telling you, it was real. In my heart, I had this hideous feeling it was all related to this Uncle Jerry's family fun zone obsession. I thought Caroline was looking for this place and was going to offer up my brother as some sort of sacrifice. Just saying it sounds so messed up. You probably think I'm yanking your chain. I mean, this is my wife we're talking about here. This is Caroline. It's fine. You don't sound like you're lying. I wouldn't. Not about this. Did you tell anyone? No. They'd probably think I was the crazy one. The whole thing was insane beyond belief, but I had to know what she was up to. So here's what I did. I told Caroline I'd found directions to Uncle Jerry's. Told her they had been folded up in some library book about this town's history or something. I gave her directions to the place, and I told her I'd check it out first. But here's the thing. I gave her the wrong directions. What do you mean? I made them up. Wrote down a bunch of gibberish. They led miles outside of town in the opposite direction. And then I followed my directions, the ones the old man left me, and they led me right to it. It was real. This Uncle Jerry's place, it was real, man. It made no sense. And then Caroline showed up. With the wrong directions? I'll never forget it. Seeing her car pull up, she should have been 40 miles away. But here she was, and that's when I knew. There was something wrong about her. Something wrong about that old man. Something wrong about that place. It was like Caroline was magnetically drawn to it. Uncle Jerry's family fun zone. Like, it exists because she believes it exists. I decided at the moment that there was some form of evil forces in the world that I would never understand. Never. And Caroline was wrapped up in it. How is the place real? Like I said, it didn't make any sense. Nothing did. We even explored the place for a while, and it was... Christ. It feels like I'm going back there right now. And I never wanted to go back there. Never. That musty smell, those animals that towered over us like monsters. It's just... Will, why don't you just end this? No. Just a little more. There's some things that you should know. I'd never seen Caroline so excited. Still haven't. I swear she was bouncing around the place. Wanted to explore every inch. She even pulled me into some horrifying corn maze I thought we'd never get out of. And then we found it. We found the place where that kid had just disappeared. Caroline pulled open this hatch in this enormous empty ball pit. And we wiggled through this crawl space that dead-ended. And then we heard something. Something else was inside that barn. We heard its footsteps above us, and it was stomping around. I thought, maybe it was the old man, because who else would know we were here? Was it the old man? It wasn't. No way. We were huddled up at the end of the crawl space, and my legs were shaking so bad I thought they would spring free from my body. Caroline held them down for me. She was so calm, just so calm. The hatch opened, and In the dark, I saw this figure kind of lean down. It definitely wasn't the old man. It was too skinny. I couldn't have been a person. It just couldn't. So we stared at it from across the crawl space, and at one point, I turned to look at Caroline, and she was watching this thing with this little grin on her face. And that thing kept right on looking and breathing. And then all of a sudden, it kind of sniffed the air, like it was sniffing us. And the voice, God, I'll never forget it. It was this voice that was deep and raspy and terrible all the same time. It said, not young enough. Then it slammed down the hatch, and it was gone. We waited a while, and when we thought it was safe, we ran back to our cars. Will, if I thought that we'd talk about this, I wouldn't have asked you to do this. I mean it. I never intended for it to be like this. It's fine. It's just, someone needed to know. I'm just glad it's you. If I can ask, and if you don't want to answer, that's totally fine. Why are you with her? Why are you married to Caroline? Because someone had to marry her, and it had to be me. Does that make sense? I know what happened at that place. I know that there's evil things in this world that would have grabbed hold of her, but she's better. She never wrote that article, never talked about Uncle Gerry's family fun zone since then. I'm not sure if she even remembers it. Maybe the evil is gone. It could be that gone forever. But I'm always waiting for it to come back. And that's why. I'll tell you this. But this goes to the grave, yeah? Yeah. She wants to have kids. Caroline wants to have a baby. But it won't be with me. I got a vasectomy years ago, back in college, actually. I won't give her a baby, not ever, not after everything that I know. But now she wants one, more than anything. She'll find out. If you guys do fertility, the doctors will find out. I know. What will you do then? I don't know. I don't know. My original hunch about my interview experiment was correct. There was just something about the microphones and tight space that elicits honesty. What I experienced with Caroline and Will was the rarest forms of honesty, and honestly I hope to never, ever experience again. I wanted to rid myself of this entire situation. Even having the audio files just felt wrong. Like I was allowing evil to fester. But then I remembered what Will told me. Someone needs to know. So I spent hours transcribing their interviews, dumped the text file on a USB drive, and tossed it into a box in my closet. I deleted the audio files from my computer, and then put my microphones and recorders out to the curb. It just wasn't worth it. But the purging didn't cure me. It was haunted by Will and Caroline's stories, and it wasn't just the horrific situations they found themselves in as high schoolers. It was the secrets and lies that they've lived with ever since. Will and Caroline came over for dinner a few weeks after the interviews, and it was like nothing was wrong. We drank, we laughed. I watched Will touch the small of Caroline's back, and Caroline gently caressed Will's elbow. It all seemed so frighteningly normal. But I knew what they were living with, and it terrified me. The next day, the doorbell rang. It was Caroline. She'd left her sweater at my place and was here to pick it up. It was my first time being alone with her since the interview. I was worried she'd bring up Uncle Gerry's family fun zone, or wanting to have a baby, or she'd again gently broach the topic of me and her, or what could have been, or what could be. I just wasn't sure. I retrieved her sweater from the kitchen and walked her to the front door. I tried to read what was going on beneath her eyes, and I looked for a flicker of that evil that Will said grabbed hold of her all those years ago. I didn't see it. I just saw a lonely, sad woman who wanted more out of life than what she was given. We reached the front door, and Caroline looked over towards my living room. Tyler lay nestled into the cushions, lost inside the pages of a fantasy book. Caroline smiled longingly at my boy and said to no one in particular, "Not young enough." Hey guys, hope you all enjoyed that. Maybe I can do another one sometime. Till then.